first day.
Yeah.
Incredible stuff. So, how does the church release hope? That's kind of what we're talking about this morning. Today, to believers and non-believers alike, the church does appear as a rather hopeless place. You heard that right. Believers and non-believers alike see the church as a rather hopeless place. Unbelievers see the church as harsh and unnecessary, knowing fully and freely what the church is against, but not knowing what the church is for. And so there's not a mad dash for the door, they're just not coming in. And believers find the church at times ineffective, not relevant. I could maybe do this better if I were just sitting at home, flip on the TV, whatever it is. Believers, of which I'm one, you can always make fun of your own mom, all right? But someone else does, it's a fight on the block. But church statistics, by the admission of believers themselves, that they're adequate, mature, thriving believers, that they come to church 12 times a year, once a month. So the question we ask today is huge and monumental. How is our church fueled by hope? Because if we spent the first half of the year, as we have, talking about how we get a hold of the hope piece, it's not going to do any good if that's all coming in here, but it ain't going out somehow to others. If our reflection of the whole thing isn't that. And we should know the scriptures and the ways to understand that hope is essential. Something moves the lever, even amongst believers, from, oh man, I got to go to church today. Man, I can hardly wait till the next thing they're doing down there. So this passage that you heard, just want to read the first part of it again. Hope-fueled churches know Jesus. Put that little word in there. Hope-fueled churches know Jesus. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do the people say that I am?" He didn't know Jesus was a pollster. They replied, "Some say you're John the Baptist, others Elijah, others Jeremiah, others the prophets. What do you say?" And now this is a sticky verse of Scripture, because we know that this is about Peter and Jesus talking, about Peter taking over the leadership. Peter is going to, take over Jesus' church. Wow, wouldn't want to follow that guy in ministry? But that's the revelation here. And we get concerned, and the church, the ancient church, has interpreted these verses as these are like Peter-only verses, but they're not. The you in question, what about you, is, what do you think? I mean, we all love to go to a coffee shop someplace. We talk about what they should be doing over there. And well, what do you think? We don't want to give our opinion out there, someone may not like us. "What about you?" he asked. "Who do you say that I am?" And Simon Peter said, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Two questions here. The first is what is the culture, and what do people say that I am? And that answer has not changed in 2,000 years. Some people out there in the culture believe that Jesus is a spiritual guy. He's a prophet. He's a teacher. He's a good man. Jesus is just all right with me. Woo! And it's good. That's, yeah, baby. Don't get me started.
No, he didn't.
You know, so that's what people think until all of a sudden they hear Peter's answer. Peter says, "You're the Christ. You're the Messiah. You're the Son of God. You're the Lord of all. You're it." And then people start peeling back. Even people in the church. Because if God's it, if Jesus is all that, and He's said some stuff that I'm still not doing, you know, well, I don't know if Jesus meant that literally. You know, how we get ourselves involved in those kind of controversies, you know, is it gross or is it net? Something like that, you know. What did Jesus really say about, you know, love my neighbor? Really? Like today we do that? Peter is able to answer the question because he has a significant personal discovery experience with Jesus. He was the guy whose boat Jesus used. He was the guy that saw the boat filled with fish. He was the guy that Jesus talked to when Jesus called him and said, "Will you follow me?" "I guess so." Jesus was the guy who beckoned him out onto the water. Jesus was the guy who sent him in ministry. He had this experience of being with Jesus. We learn from the passage that Peter knew Jesus. More people know something about Jesus than know Jesus. I'll give you an even more startling statistic. Most people, or more people, know the Lord's Prayer than know that Jesus is Lord. Wow. That kind of got under the door, didn't it? It might have got in your wallet. It might have got in your heart just now. Some people know the Lord's Prayer more than they know Jesus as Lord. That's why this is important. You see, Jesus wants you to be walking with Him. I'm not talking about your salvation. Your salvation comes when you get to that place in your life where you say, "Lord Jesus, come into my life. I really need you." If you haven't done that, I want to encourage you to do that before coming to the table this morning. But you see, the rest of the story is that I have all of this stuff that I'm going through that I call life, and Jesus calls school of relationship. Are you just going to figure out how to do it this week, Jeff? Or are you going to walk with me so that you have a significant understanding of how I, the Lord Christ, can tell you who I am in the experiences that you have on a daily basis? That's what needs to be revealed. We are not a hopeful church if we know about Jesus, but we do not know Jesus. And I'm going to say something a little bit startling at the end, and you just kind of hold on to that until we get there. Hope-filled churches listen to Jesus. Jesus says this, "Blessed are you, Simon." This is, by the way, this is when Peter is sitting in the front of the class. There's times when he got sent to the back seat of the class, or maybe in the corner of the class with one of those hats on. "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by man, but by the Father in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church." This is where the text gets sideways. If you've had a relationship or some formation in the Roman Catholic Church, this is where the text goes a little bit sideways. So let me just talk about that again. Peter is being addressed, but so are the rest of us. The one thing you need to know about this passage is the very place where this conversation took place. We know where that's at. It's amazing. You can go there. I've been there 4 times. There is a rock that you stand on in front of this cave that's about the size of those 2 doors together. And that cave goes, and it gets real dark, and it just goes, and out of that cave comes this big river. And it's going by you, and you're standing on this rock. And Peter says, "On this rock I will build my church." Now, it so happens that Peter's name also means rock, or Simon Peter, the rock. So he is saying, Peter, you're going to be the first guy that takes over. I'm going to pass the baton to you. But that's not the most important thing of what I'm saying. I just want you to get a picture in your mind of Jesus standing with Peter on a rock. And he says, here's where I'm going to build the church. And I just want you to hold that for a minute. Jesus is saying to Peter, you listened to my Father, and my Father revealed it. Do you know that we are like an FM receiver, but if we've got it turned to AM, we're not getting the messages of God. God is constantly wanting to interrupt the signal of your life and say, I've got some things to reveal to you. But you also have to go to places. You know how you avoid a place? Because someone may show up there, and they may tell you something there that's of vital importance to you, but you don't want to hear it right now. So you just got something else to do. Or I kind of got a phone call. Well, actually, I kind of made a phone call. And on it goes. So Jesus is saying, first and foremost, Peter's listening to the Father. And then he says this, and this is really important if you're a kind of a comparative religions buff. Jesus then says, and I love this, you know, it has been revealed to you by the Father in heaven. And I tell you, do you know that there's no other recorded religious leader, sage, prophet in the world that said, hey, you know, God says this, but I say. Did you ever hear that in this passage? That has never happened in all of recorded history. I mean, you know, we've got to throw in Charles Manson and a few of those guys, David Koresh, you know. But we already know that they were a couple sandwich short of a picnic, and they weren't trying to be truthful. Jesus is it. He says, if you heard a revelation from the Father, then you really need to be listening to me. If I am the Father's surrogate here. And he says, I got something to tell you. Listen to me. Have a listening relationship with Jesus. I get this all the time. Well, do I have to read my Bible? And the immediate answer is no. You should love to read your Bible and hear the message of Jesus. But if it's one more duty to check off, you won't have joy. You won't have the hope. And a hope-filled Christian understands where they get the gas to make the car run. I can have a classic, I don't. But I can have a classic car in my garage that only has, you know, 60 miles on it. Never put gas in it, I never drive it. People come over and go, here's my classic car. Can we go for a ride? Oh! Its seat's dirty. Something. You see. I'm not saying anything about our salvation this morning. That's something that has taken place between you and God. But is your car getting driven? Listening to the place where that can happen. Well, the important part of the passage is that. So the third thing is that hope-fueled churches live dangerously. Now, I know I've only read so far to the first half of verse 18, but I'm going to let you read the second half of verse 18 right now, and then you're going to have a quiz, okay? So go read the second half of verse 18. I'm going to ask you right now. You've got seconds. Got stuff to do today. Okay, so here's my question. Hope-fueled churches live dangerously. Where does Jesus, according to the text, build the church? Okay. What? Gates of hell. At the gates of hell. He takes this big, beautiful church and he puts it right next to the Clear Lake fire and says, go ahead, fire. Give me your best shot. Okay, so take some digest time. I'm going to talk quickly, but you think slowly about this. Have we lost sight of this? have we lost sight that we are supposed to be in a dangerous place? We are supposed to live dangerously, that we were built in a war zone, not a comfort zone. And that we were sent out to wage the most stupid war that has ever been waged. And that was God's idea, not mine. That we would go and confront the enemy, and we would not kill them or get rid of them. We would let them see the love of Jesus, and they would become part. You know, the only way to make the only way to really get rid of the enemy is to make them friends. That's what God has asked us to do. Now listen very carefully here. American, Western, European Christianity has attempted in the last 30 or 40 years to protect its comfort zone by its affluence, its presence, its power, to keep the war someplace else. You're going to hear a lot of people screaming about the loss of religious liberties in America. And all of those kinds of things. They're taken from us. And they're changing this. You know who they are? They are nothing. God's in charge. God wants to send us into the war zone to reach the enemy for Jesus. How do I know this? Because Jesus said in verse 24 of the chapter we're reading, take up your cross and follow me. What happens if you're dragging a cross around town? You know what they do to you if you're dragging a cross? They nail you to it. Jesus knew this, and so did the disciples. They weren't going to a comfort zone. They were going to the war zone. How about Paul? 2 Timothy 3:18. Everyone who wants to live a godly life in Jesus Christ will be persecuted. It's not like it might happen. We don't know that here. And now that it's starting to kind of creep in around us, we're fighting the battle to keep the creeps from creeping in. Instead of inviting the creeps into church and turning them into, hypocritical creeps like us. That are saved and working on what it is that we do next. Join us. We're not perfect. It's perfect. James said, consider it pure joy whenever you face these trials. The church was built on a dynamite keg. And someone said, Jesus, don't you think you want to move that over a couple blocks? They're going to blow that thing sky high. Yeah, that's just going to send my people everywhere. I'm all right. They'll be okay. They might break a leg or an arm. They might limp the rest of their life, but they're going to dance with me in heaven forever. We're not going to get that here. No matter what constitutional, political, I've got to save that for next week. But see, that's not going to change it. It's your heart change. I almost skipped Peter. He should have the last word. Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trials you are suffering. Are we going to go through the tribulation? Yes. We're in it, baby. It's happening. You can't even ask that question to someone who's worshiping in a church in Vietnam. They'll just laugh at you. We are in the tribulation. Go to the church in Africa. There's no comfort zone. They're not building a big wall on some border to save us all from whoever it is we're trying to reach. Jesus came to Jesus, said, can I use your boat? Yes. Jesus said, I know it's daytime, you guys fish at night, but I'm God. Can you let down the nets? Yes. Big catch. Will you follow me? Yes. Will you step out of the boat in a big storm? Yes. And then he's drowning. Will you take my hand? Yes. 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 God's got a game plan. He knows everybody, everywhere who's doing everything. And he still says, my church, bring me glory by letting me fill you with unexplainable hope. I mean, I get my two sisters celebrating their cancer thing. Makes sense. I don't get Randy smiling in church. I don't get that. That's unexplainable. I don't get someone who says, I'm not really having a very good day singing. Do you think you could put up with me for a few minutes while I sing this song? That's what we're doing on the worst day in our life. Is what Jesus is interested in. I want to pump that up. He's building the church in hell. And if our church isn't located, it's moving there. It's coming close. Then he says this, and again, this is confounding to people, but I just want you to hear it out, and we go to the community. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. Whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Then he warned them, his disciples, not to tell anyone that he was the Christ. That's the easy verse. You'd think, come on, Jesus, you should have a stadium ministry and be on TV next week. He says, don't tell anyone. Not going to happen. So that's the point. That's the point. All right. Fueled churches with hope are churches that obey. Remember last week we talked about obedience. Biblical obedience is always listening to God in order to act. Non-biblical obedience is, I'm listening to your advice and I'll think about it. And we've mixed the two. In the church where we have lots of stuff, we can mix the two. I don't know. Jeff may have been full of beans this morning. I'm just going to see what Joyce Myers has to say. Love Joyce. Love Sister Joyce. That's great. She's awesome. I want to, you know what I'm saying? I want to see what Joel has to say today. A good uplifting message. Hope-fueled churches obey by receiving and responding. So this is what Jesus is giving Peter, and he's giving to you too. A, the keys. Peter is receiving the keys, and so are you. You're not going to get off the hook. You've been given the key. The keys to the kingdom are given to us. And it is a unique privilege and a profound responsibility to have the keys to the kingdom. You need to know that. I haven't told you what they are yet. I'm going to in a minute. But that happened to Peter, but it wasn't just Peter for one time, and he's the only guy, and only the people who, have touched his crown or whatever can be a part of that. This is, Peter started that, but we're all in it now. Wasn't it the same Peter that in his letter to the church said, we are a priesthood of all believers? Peter, before he died, handed his priesthood to everybody. If you're walking with me, you're priests and priestesses of the church. I'll say that for another sermon, right? You're all in it. And here's what the keys are. This whole concept of binding and loosing. In the earth, as it will be in heaven. Now, I know this sounds confusing to folks. Hang on. This is really simply put in plain language. Okay, in the Old Testament, they were binding and loosening behaviorally. So just write the word behavior or behaviorally. In other words, the chief person who was in charge of the synagogue or was a religious leader or the priest or whoever they were, they would decide what was allowed and what was forbidden. You're allowed to do this, but you're forbidden from doing this. Why? Because the Old Testament covenant was, if you behave well enough, if you could get up on your spiritual tippy toes, God might say you're in. That's what the Old Covenant was all about. If you could do the Ten Commandments, you're in. And so they all tried to do the Ten Commandments. You know how many people made the Ten Commandments? Goose egg. Yeah, now it's done. Why did God do that? Because he wanted us all to know we can't get up on our, I can barely do it. We can't get up on our tippy toes and please God. You just can't do it. He had a better covenant, and that's what we're going to talk about here. You see, the binding and loosening in the New Testament is relational. God came, taught, gave his life in the form of Jesus. He conquered sin and death by his life, death, and by his resurrection, he gives us life. So instead of us sitting here today sweating it out in all of our guilt and all of our shame and trying harder and doing more to please God as if that could do it, he's saying you bind sin in your life. You're listening, aren't you? You bind sin in your life by receiving God's forgiveness. Now, how does that work? Well, because if you're humble enough to take every little thing you do wrong to the Father, and you know that the Father isn't going to hit you with a stick and then say, okay, now you're all right. But the Father's just going to grab you up like a little child, snuggle you into his lap and say, you are forgiven, and you can do this like a billion times, and all you ever get from me is a hug and love that is beyond anything you can know. And you know what happens? We begin behaviorally to stop sinning because we really like sitting in Abba's lap. It changes our hearts. We start leaving all that stuff that we thought we had to have. I don't need that. Sitting in the Father's lap is amazing. That's how we bind sin. And how then, in all of this, do we lose grace into the world? Well, that happens when you forgive others. Just forgive them. Oh my, I don't know. I really think that person needs to go through some pain. Yeah, see? And you know what the church does today? We bind forgiveness and we lose sin into the world because we make it more important because we're going to get that guy. And if there's anyone that lived on the face of the earth, Jesus should have at least once to one person said, well, I'm going to get you. I'm not done. He did. Not with you. And he's not doing it with the people you won't forgive. Get with the program. Binding and loosening is to bind sin by being forgiven. To lose grace into the world so that people go, oh, people are they're crazy. I mean, I went over there and tagged their church and broke 6 windows. They fixed it. They loved at me. They read me the 4 spiritual laws. Something. I mean, I don't know how many times someone has, I don't know what it is about that wall over there. Someone always drives their car into that wall. How many times we've had to come up with grace for people who bash that wall? Dave, isn't it fun being on the trustees? Fix the wall again. Show them some grace. Okay, so here's the thing that we might have walked in. We might have thought this morning that when you go to church, if they've got, if the pastor's on today, it's a little bit funny, the liturgy, that's cool, that, the music's good, that, the staff people that are taking care of our kids, they're good, the program's tight. Boy, that's a hope-filled church. That's not enough. The people that are visiting want to know that you're hope-filled. They want you to come up to, well, I don't know those people. Well, they don't know you either, but you're in the church and you're representing God. You're the high priest of Peter for that person. But you can just, ramble on over there and say, hi, I don't know you, but I'm so glad you're here today. You know how much hope that will give you when you get into your car and walk? Hey, honey, I forgot to be done. Woo! She's going to look at you. What? What? I like it when Pam laughs. My goal in life. So there's 4 questions. There's 4 really difficult questions you're going to need to ask yourself if you want to be filled with hope. And here it is. Do I know Jesus? What do I know? Do I know him? Okay? Hey. Because people love people who aren't self-righteous, but they're kind of God-righteous. They're kind of like Jesus. Can I discern God's will? Can I pull down godly wisdom, or do I just know all the church rules? You know, people don't like a know-it-all. They want someone who's speaking from the heart. Are you willing to take risk? You know, when we act in faith, we take risk. People don't like. You know why people watch reality TV? Because some guy's on a motorcycle is going to jump some ravine, and we think he's going to kill himself. Woohoo! Great, we got popcorn. We're sitting by the TV set. Man, this is a civil society. And they don't. Come on, they're not going to put it on TV if the guy goes all over the place. Maybe the 1 o'clock news or something. No one's watching. But you see, people are attracted to the church that's taking risks. Wow. They got faith. And then this last one, and this is spelled wrong up there, so it's okay, Claire. Will I deal with known disobedience? Are you willing to write down your list of known disobediences, stick it in your Bible, look at it every day and say, God, I got to get unhooked from this stuff. I know this is what I do, and it doesn't please you, and I know I got forgiveness for it, and we're working that out. But man, I got to figure out a way to get around that, and you got to help me. I need your help. Jesus, as we come to the table this morning, we have this splendid opportunity to know who you are,